Notices? Any apologies? Being none, any conflicts of declarations? Any conflicts of interest declarations? No conflicts declared. Confirmation of the minutes. Would someone like to move the minutes as circulated be confirmed?
Yep, do.
Alex Craig. Any errors or omissions? All those in favour say aye. Contrary no. Carried. Call for minor items not on the agenda. 10 seconds is gone. You've had your time. The first major thing is I'd like to introduce, it's item 6, Dave Gawn, the new Chief Executive of the National Emergency Management Agency, ex-Army, and interestingly, we've had a long string of Air Force helicopter pilots, so it's kind of broken the mould. We'll see how much else the mould he breaks. So Dave, introduce yourself.
Has he got his microphone on?
You're on mute, Dave.
You're on mute, Dave. This is a very good start.
You should have seen me earlier, Councillor. Ko raki te maunga ko manahira kia te awa, ko ngā tahu, te awa, Ngāti Tamatueka, te iwi, ko te awa o te waka a Maui, Onuku, Rongo marae roa o ngā ho e whā te marae ko Dave toko ingoa. Kia ora rā, kia ora e te whānau. Hey, it's great to see you again. It seems like it was only last week. In fact, it was only last week, a couple of days ago, that I spoke to a number of you. As Councillor Barker has said, I'm ex-military. And breaking the mould of helicopter pilots, I think, is a really good thing. Green is a far nicer colour than light blue, but it is great to be in this job. I do recognise that I am only actually 7 months into the job, so I am starting to get a feel for it. But I also recognise that it's been it's unique times. I came in the very first week of the Delta lockdown. And still have not met all of the team that we have here at NEMA. We have not had the opportunity to get together since I've been in this role. So it's, as I say, it's quite unique in that respect. Hey, I'm not going to go through a hell of a lot this morning. This afternoon. Other than to, I guess, give my initial impressions of NEMA and where we want to go to. I'll mention briefly the trifecta, but you had, quite a good insight from Minister Allen and the discussions that we had last week. So if there's anything you want to follow up in that space, we'll do that. But I should be able to give you some time back, depending on how much talking you yourselves want to do. It's very rude of me. I haven't acknowledged the mayors and the chief executives who are online, so I acknowledge that. But also the recent events that you've been going through with the weather that's had a significant impact on Tairāwhiti, but also I think, as I understand, at your area as well, more recently, and it's probably raining there right now. That I think actually puts in perspective just and context what it is that this land of ours is about. The upheavals, the changeable and often dramatic weather, in my mind, actually shapes who we are as a people, who we are as a nation, and it's part of what makes this job, one, necessary, but two, also attractive to an awful lot of people. And NEMA is, for that matter, it's 2 years, yes, just over 2 years old. And like any 2-year-old, it's still actually learning to walk. And I've got to admit, we've fallen on our face a few times in the last 6 months or so. We actually have a strength of 180, but we actually hold about 50 vacancies at the moment that we're rapidly trying to fill. But that's really challenging in these times where everybody seems to want emergency management, and we get poached the whole time in terms of different people to fill other slots across the state services, but also in the private sector. And that's going to be an ongoing challenge. along with it, the burnout that many sections are feeling, not just within NEMA, but I think across the whole emergency management sector, with these continual events in an environment that also has or is on top of COVID, for more than 2 years now. So it is challenging for us and for everyone else. So we're going through a big change management period at the moment. But what I will say is there's a hell of a lot of talent in this organisation. We've just now got to harness it, bring it together, create a culture that actually takes us to good. We're not even on the journey to great, but gets us to good. And as part of that, bring along everybody else with us. And I certainly recognise that NEMA it's a national level body, absolutely. But in actual fact, the only way that we can do anything at all and the true operational arm of emergency management is at the local level, which is at the CDM and local government side of things. So it's a whole lot of work to go, and as I've said a couple of times here, if we're still in this state 12 months from now, then I'll be handing in my notice because I haven't been able to achieve what we actually need to in terms of going further forward than where we are. I won't say anything on the trifecta. As I say, we can come back to that if you've got any questions. Suffice to say that it is the Minister's highest priority in terms of delivery in this term. She certainly has other priorities, but that has, as you are well aware, had or has influenced previous timelines in terms of which to my mind was one, unachievable from our perspective, let alone from local government, with all the additional pressures that you've got on you with the Local Government Act, 3 Waters, the NAP, the RMA, the DHBs and so on. So it's great that we've been able to get a little bit more time. But that said, we're still not able to throw much more resources in it from a NEMA perspective beyond the very limited team that we actually have working on it currently. So we can come back to that. What I do want to do is just go through a couple of things that I guess are my priorities and what attracted me to the role in the first instance. And I just want to cover three areas really, and then just throw it open to questions. The first is around workforce and our requirement to have, at the very least, the minimum credible capability. A workforce that's professional, a workforce that is community-based, local communities, iwi, Maori, and that is volunteer-based. The reality is we can't afford anything more than that, and that's how it works on the ground. It works very effectively, but we've also got to be, at the same token, far more creative in terms of how we harness that. And we're looking at that now currently with both the West Coast and Tairāwhiti, and the challenges in both places in terms of how to manage that more effectively, as I say, from a local perspective, but also from a national perspective in terms of how to enable that far more than what we do currently, whether that's through resources, whether it's through training, whether it's through standards, or whether it's just through creative ideas such as, and I'll use the West Coast for an example, Bathurst always, which is a mining company down there, always come to the party. But we as NEMA / McDem before them have never provided any training opportunities or anything else that goes with that actually meets the requirements for continuous professional development within the mining industry. So to create a partnership that actually enables them to lean in as heavily, if not more heavily than they currently do, is something that we're keen to explore. In the same token, the same with DOC down in that area, so that we have local capability and capacity for local issues. The other area is in the area of resilience, and I know that Councillor Barker, I think this is warm to your heart in relation to that. To my mind, resilience should be, it's not at the moment, but it should actually be one of the cornerstones of our security strategy. It's arguable whether we have one, but resilience is what we should all be thinking about And it has to be intergenerational resilience, not just resilience around the space of infrastructure and the facilities and resources and utilities. And by intergenerational resilience, I refer to the knowledge, the education, the training from as early as the Girl Scouts who get the Girl Scout badge around emergency development, through the youth programs, through NCEA programs, into tertiary education and on. And if we can do that, then we create genuine pathways in terms of professionalisation within New Zealand, which has a flow-on effect well beyond the one or two. It reminds me a little bit of what we tried to do in Bosnia when I first arrived over there. It's a little worry, but we were losing as many as 9 people a week in the minefields between the Bosniaks and the Croats, and we had a real struggle in terms of gaining any traction in terms of educating them to the dangers of minefields. And the way we were able to do it was actually through the primary school kids, because everybody wants their kids to be safe. So we were able to bring both the Croats and Bosniaks together to do this combined educative process to the young kids at primary school, because we weren't able to contact their parents, or we weren't able to engage with their parents. But through them, we engaged with the whole generation all the way through. To my mind, resilience, intergenerational resilience, needs to actually have that same flow from the earliest time all the way through, because as I said right in the opening remarks, this issue of the land that we live in will forever be susceptible to the dangers that we have from disasters. That in turn will now enable the development of seamless career pathways across the emergency management sector. And we're working on this separately with what we call the Emergency Sector Leadership Board, which brings in fire, police, defence, emergency management, NEMA, ambulance, health, and we're looking at a couple of other areas, including NGOs, to look at what we can do as a sector to, again, better enable this sort of professional workforce from the volunteer, the spontaneous volunteer, all the way through to the professional. So those are, just a couple of areas that I'm particularly interested in, on top of all of the other stuff that we need to do around the plan, the Act, the alternate NCMC, the National Crisis Management Centre, and so on. But as we say again in the military, you go to war with the army you've got, not necessarily the army you want. But in peacetime, in those times between disasters, we've actually got to build that towards the army or the emergency management sector that we actually want. And suffice to say, we're not actually there yet. I'm just going to actually leave it there and just throw it open. There are a couple of other areas, if you want to explore them, that I'm happy to, particularly around continuous improvement, around lessons, but also in terms of operational areas such as common operating pitches. And we're certainly not anywhere near where we need to be in any of those spaces. From a NEMA perspective, we have 3 areas of responsibility. The first is stewardship, and quite frankly, a lot of people don't understand the term, let alone how we can actually get into that space as a very small organisation across the all of government sector. Operations, which everybody certainly seems to understand in terms of what the intent is, but there are challenges with that. And the other area is in the area of risk and assurance. And that's a space that we're only just starting to explore from the perspective of NEMA. Councillor Barker, I'll leave it there and just throw it open to questions. I think is probably the best option.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Dave. We'd welcome you to come here and see us. We can have a cup of coffee and have a chew over the fat over that, a bit more relaxed thing. These aren't the most relaxed settings, actually. I've got no more questions. Anybody questions? Okay,
Josh,
thank
this
you.
easy.
We'll box on. I'll leave the
Thank
legal
you.
questions for a later time. I've got limited time here. I've got to be out of here by 1:55, and if I'm not finished by then, it'll hand to Mayor Alex. I've been through the agenda pretty carefully, and there's not much in it at all. So I'll now move on to item 7, the amendments to the Regional Plan Recovery Managers, and we are saying goodbye to 2 people and hi to a new person. And that, as I understand it from talking to Ian, they were going to leave one of the positions open. As I understand it, Bruce Allen is known to some of us, so I'm very happy to move the recommendation. Any questions? Yes, Alex.
I would like to hear the endorsement of KEG to these changes, please.
Steph, Monique, James.
Nigel.
There was an awkward silence there, Mayor Alex, sorry, as I was looking to Monique or myself as the incoming chair. So absolutely endorsing the recommendations here from the officers with respect to Bruce. There would be the position that I would be taking. To my knowledge, this wasn't formally discussed at KEG and has come to fruition since, but certainly willing to speak on behalf of a partner, Chief Executive, that Bruce is an outstanding candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm willing to second when you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions, comments? Okay.
Yes, sorry, through the chair, could I just ask, I note that the Napier alternate has been left vacant at this point in time. Is there a timeline around when that recommendation and appointment will come through?
Ian?
No, the Napier one is, so Richard Manahiki is still the alternate.
Yes, Richard's still the alternate, but there is one vacancy. And I questioned Ian about this, so 2 out, 1 in, where's the gap? And he says to me that when a few other things are in place, they'll come back with a recommendation for the other position to be filled at that point. All right, I'll put the question. All those in favour will say aye, contrary no, carried. Now come on to item 8, Hawke's Bay Regional Alerting Systems Reviews and Options. Again, a straightforward paper from Massey University. Being a university paper, it's about 5 times longer than necessary, but anyway, it gets there. If you're ever suffering insomnia one night, read it again. Ian, would you like anything you'd like to add to this?
No, other than this has been through Napier City Council, obviously, and this will be the 3rd, 4th meeting, I think, that this has been presented to, and some of you have been in some of those meetings, but so I'm just happy to answer any questions at this stage.
Questions? Any hands up? Okay. For the sake of it, Alex?
Sorry, I just was technically challenged there for a second. Just my question is about next steps, actually, about how this is communicated publicly.
Yeah, so we're working on a plan around that. At the moment, we're just focusing on Napier because we have disestablished the siren system, which they've been used to. But we will be rolling out an education program across the entire region around the emergency management, mobile alerts in particular, but then also looking at other systems to fill in the gaps. So there obviously not everybody has a cell phone, and not every settlement or every area in the region has cell phone coverage. So there's a little bit of work to be done in that space. But what we want to do is just more formalise our mass public alerting systems across the region.
So, Alex, would you like to move an amendment that 6, that an appropriate communications plan be worked out and agreed by the chief executives before it's implemented?
Yeah.
Right, Minute Secretary, you've got that?
Yes.
He says he has. Is that now your motion, Alex?
Looks like it might be.
Good, all right. Sandra?
Just happy to second, Mr. Chair.
Oh, wonderful, thank you, very helpful, very helpful. Any debate, any questions? Okay, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour of the amended motion, please say aye. Contrary, no.
Aye.
Carried. We now move on to the group manager's update.
Yeah, so look, again, something to be taken as read unless there's any questions. This is just really updating you on matters which aren't covered in this report from the last, since the last meeting. And the only other thing that hasn't been covered in this report, obviously, were the events of last week, but obviously that's something for the next meeting in a bit more detail.
Sure. Any questions of Ian? Okay, I've seen the report. I just want to say to you that I like the idea that we are working with the VHF radio network. I think it's great. I don't see Starlink as a disruptive technology. I think it's a superior technology. Pleased to see you've got a $100,000 budget and agree that it go into the reserves and we continue to levy the rate as we are doing. Right.
Agreed. I like that bit about Starlink as well, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Okay. I'm looking for Craig to move that the paper be received. It's very good. Sandra will second that. Excellent. Any other questions? No problem. Thank you very much. And I'll put the question. All those in favour will say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Now the item 10, report on strengthening CDM and Hawke's Bay implementation report. Ian, have you got any key overhead comments you'd like to make about this?
Only from the first part of my report, which is the program is on track, however, under pressure because of the current COVID situation and the ability to actually move some of these projects forward. But at the moment, we are still on track, and that's outlined. I do have a couple of staff who are deployed at the moment to the DHB to support them over the next 4 or 5 weeks. And so one of those staff members in particular is the welfare manager, and that's obviously putting that project a little bit at risk. But other than that, there's some really good work being done, particularly with the common operating platform, but also with the building work, the building assessment work, and also the operating framework, which we've already had one workshop, and another workshop has been planned in the next month.
Excellent. As I see the report, Ian, all the yellows are basically COVID related, but everything appears to be on track and progressing as normal, as we'd expect. Any questions of Ian on the report, please? Sandra.
Kia ora. Thank you for your report. I'm just really interested in separate reports, and I think about RAG, Ian, and thinking about how we get. So, for example, on Friday there's 50 people at a meeting with RAG, and how do we get CDM to bring that information forward to us as mayors when we're contacted by the media to say how is our rural community coping at the present time. Now, really, I have no way of getting that information, and I need to then ring up my people who advise me. But I just think that there needs to be, when we go through a situation like we did, Wednesday and Thursday, Friday, we need to be able to have very regular, and it should be just you guys. At the moment, I've got messages coming from my staff and so forth, and so I should be able to go to a sit rep report and know instantly what is happening. So I didn't know that Glengarry Road got 230 millimetres and the issues that they were having there. Now, I knew that our CBD was experiencing 100 millimetres in that period of time. But, we got contacted by Radio New Zealand to say, how are you tracking in Hawke's Bay? And I didn't know the severity of Central Hawke's Bay either, and the issues that they were facing with potential, the Waipara River, etc., etc. So, I think we need to have a look at how we communicate together as regions leaders. And clearly, am I missing something? I'm not sure. But I don't have up-to-date information to be able to make statements on behalf of Heritonga about how our rural community are faring, unless I pick up the telephone and ring a whole lot of people, which is, what happened. So can you just help me work through how we do this and how we could improve? And I know you said you're coming back to this next meeting, but this is absolutely key when I look at the operating framework and response structure, reset. This is the reset. And this is, how's this going to work? How are we going to do it better? And how are these workshops going to change and improve what we do? Because we've got a big network out there and we need to be connected somehow.
Thank you, Sandra. James.
Follow-on question from Sandra, and it's really, I think hopefully answers the question, and it's to Ian, and it's just who was on the circulation list last week of the situation reports, because obviously they came out daily, they detailed in great length all the dimensions of the event and the response, but it's just not clear on the email who the recipients was. It just has Ian McDonald as a recipient. And certainly I know when I passed it on to my elected members on Friday night, that gave them a very comprehensive overview of the situation. They were enormously grateful. Maybe it's just a question of whether we ensure that certainly the Joint Committee, if not wider circulation, have visibility of those reports.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that I'll make sure that in future the distribution list is actually there. I'm not too sure why they put it blind copied to everybody. There's no need for that. So you should be able to see who it's been sent to within your organisation. So that goes to all of the controllers at a local level. It also goes to the CEs as well. I did send the first one out to all of the mayors, so that one definitely did go out to all of the mayors, because I sent it separately, but I didn't send the second one out. And so I suppose that's partially my error, but it could have, We traditionally haven't sent out every single sit rep out to the mayors, but I'm quite happy to do that if that's what you want.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. So look, I think you hit the nail on the head, Mayor Sandra, when you said that it's a hugely complex system. It is massively complex, and there's many different people having input into the information that comes into the centre. And sometimes it's not timely, and so we've got to decipher it all and put it into something which actually makes sense, and try and get it out to you, which is what we tried to do earlier on. Definitely, there was nothing raised with us in terms of Napier and Hastings. We had regular catch-ups with the controllers twice a day from your controllers, so that's basically both Napier and Hastings. As well as the other two councils as well, and the regional council. So the detail around what was happening in each district was discussed with each of the controllers. So I think probably the common operating platform is the one project that will help with this, because it will enable people to actually look at the detail electronically, but also, as you point out, the framework, and also how communication happens of this information within organisations. So quite often I think people get the information, but they don't pass it on through their organisation. And I think that's quite important that we sort of deal with that as well, about the importance of passing it on.
Yeah, well, two things. I just think go back to the fundamental is the circulation list should be the chief executives and the mayors and chair. Simple as that.
Yep.
It's then their responsibility to pass it on to their councillors, and that'll solve that. But I also think the other issue we've got to have a look at is, in return to Sandra's point and Ian's, is that there is a vast array of information out there. A lot of these systems are all live, able to be monitored externally by any party, and we just can't be over the lot. So we need to have a way which sweeps up all this information and gives it to our leaders in a digestible format pretty quickly, so they feel that they are engaged with this as well. So that's got to be part of our thinking. I'm going to have to go.
Thank you, Rick.
And
And
I'm gonna
thank you, Ian.
And
And can I just point out too that, and I know you have to go, Rick, but while I'm speaking to Ian directly, I'd love to know, it's really important for me to understand the state of our play in our district. So, I knew that we lost enormous amount of pumpkin crops. Strawberries came to an end. Grapes were struggling. That we are a region who produces food. And so to me, that's civil defence as well. It's the people, it's also, and so I then made some calls to our community to see how they were faring. They were so grateful, but I had to ring up to find out how they were faring. I didn't know they'd lost paddocks and paddocks of pumpkins. Strawberries had come to an end and they hoped that they were going to be able to continue to Easter. That economic well-being, we need to be thinking, just as you would have heard at that RAG meeting that you attended on Friday afternoon, Ian, mayors need to hear this stuff as well, because those are the people who we work all the time with to make sure that they're doing okay. And if I don't have that meeting without having to ring up 10 people, that information, it's hard.
Thank you.
Just last thing before I head out the door, can I just say, in part of my culture, this thing when the king is gone, the king is dead, long live the king, the new one. Can I just say, the queen is gone, the new queen has arrived. Thank you for everything you've done here, Monique, and welcome Steph to the new role. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And I think that means that now I'm in charge, Mr. Chair, is that correct?
Exactly, you've got the baton.
Mayor Walker, I think Monique has a question.
Yeah, I had noticed that. Monique, was there anything you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sandra. Point well made about opportunities to improve that operating system based on some experience just in the last 2 days. So thank you. I think we can all pick that up, and I agree that connectivity between the RAG and the rest of the framework would be helpful if it was strengthened and clarified. Is there any other questions about this report, the implementation report on our improvements? Monique.
Yeah, Mayor Walker. So just acknowledging that our last joint standing committee meeting, the advice as chief executives we gave you was that a really comprehensive kind of workshop around where we are in terms of our status report of the improvement program was suggested for this meeting. For a range of reasons, obviously that's not going to happen, but I just think it's important that the mayors note that that is an action for the future, because the continued momentum of this transformation program is critical.
Agreed. Continued momentum is vital, and the way that we're connected to it is vital too. We've all bought into the direction of this because it is very important to the region. So I just would like to say the reporting, Ian, the reporting is really clear about where the key work areas are and the managing schedule, risks and budget, and the situation on each of the actions is really clear. Thank you. A really great report.
Thank you.
And very clear where everything's at, which is helpful, and I think probably we should make sure it's deliberately passed to our respective council law teams as well, so that they're aware of where things are at. So we have recommendation that the CDM Joint Committee receives and notes this report, which is called Progress Report Strengthening CDM and Hawke's Bay Implementation Report. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Meg, Craig and Kirsten, all those in favour please say aye. Against, carried. And noting that actually at this point we don't have a quorum, but we'll note that that is in workshop that we are collecting that information. And I believe that might actually be the end of the agenda.
Yes.
There is an item from NEMA as an update, but
Yes, and then so that's the formal part of the agenda,
yes.
And then we should have whether there's anything additional from NEMA. Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou. So Dave's given you a bit of a state of the nation, so I won't take up too much of your time. I did just want to clarify around the timelines for trifecta have been shifted back. And so what we're looking at is submissions are likely to be called for in November. And that process will likely go out into early 2023. So it gives us more time to form up the policy proposals with what we've heard through our engagements with you. And I just want to say thank you to Ian for helping bring together feedback from Hawke's Bay within the short timeline in the middle of summer when people were still on leave and all of that. So we do really appreciate that. And we're also starting to push forward with the next part of the trifecta program, which is basically reshaping the plan. At the moment, it's kind of this really legal jargony document, and we're trying to turn it into something that's easy and user-friendly to pick up and read. So we're working out our plan to work with the sector on that and pull in some of the expertise that we've got around the country, while also not overburdening people with really busy work programs. Other than trifecta, also did just want to pick up the Ruamako's walkbook that Hawke's Bay was involved in developing has been provided to 740 schools across the country. So just shout out to that awesome work that's been going on. NEMA's also developing a couple of public education campaigns with targeted communications for Māori, Pacifica and culturally and linguistically diverse communities. And last two, I think. So we're currently working towards standing up the MA. So that's our monitoring, alerting and reporting system. So at the moment, our current duty arrangements are that a team of BAU staff also carries duty. We're looking at standing up a 24/7 centre with specialised staff who will be on that. So that's to support more effective and speedy information coming out through that duty function. We've also signed an MOU with the Ministry for Pacific Peoples. And that's basically looking at formalising our partnership and supporting the development of a work program to support more effective disaster risk management for Pacifica communities in New Zealand. And we have also established an international team. So across NEMA, teams are sort of already involved with projects, especially David Coetzee does a lot of work in the tsunami space, providing advice on the international stage. But setting up that team is going to give us a better way to make sure we're meeting our international commitments and support us domestically as well with things like getting in international assistance from overseas during large-scale events. So that's some of the big things that have been happening for us at the moment. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you, Jackie. When you talk about the MAR, M-A-R, I missed exactly what it stood for, but this idea of having 24/7 on-call team in Wellington, is that so there is somewhere that any district in the country can contact if there is an event unfolding? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so at the moment we have our duty team and we have a duty function. So as a REMA, the group can contact me as something's starting to unfold. But basically what we're looking at is stepping up that system and having a group of people who are on site awake, and that's their primary role, to be providing that duty system. So we do things like when there's an earthquake, we'll assess the tsunami risk and decide whether to put out an EMA or not. So that's sort of the national level decision. And then we're working with the group about what they're doing at the local level. So we're sort of scaling up our capability and then working with the groups as to what that looks like for them.
Okay. Having just freshly come out of responding to a weather event, the last thing on our minds is to ring NEMA. Actually, the first thing on our minds is what we're doing in our community and how we're gathering the information and the response framework. So I think we just need to make sure that there's a rational connection in how that operates through individually from us through to the region and then to NEMA, so that it's practical.
Yeah, agree. And we don't want to overburden you guys at the local level because we know you're busy doing what you're doing. But there is also sort of at our end, you know, that real hunger for information, just as you guys feel that, our minister feels that. So I'm often hassling the groups to get those updates and reports as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I haven't asked my chief executive what contact happened between us and you guys this week, but it certainly wasn't directed through me. Any other questions for Jackie? Okay. Ian, is there any other items that we need to discuss today?
No, I think that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other items from the team? No? Good. Well, let's just hope it doesn't rain too much more this week. Thank you all very much.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you, team.
We will.